Hi, people. This is DJ.
This is Ish.
And this is
Season
season 3
3
of Pero Let Me Tell You. And then you're like, ay, qué rico, la lluvia, estoy en la casa. And then it's like,
But I'm always in La Casa.
it's like, flooding. And then when it's when it's not raining and you have to go outside, la humedad.
Wait, is it me or has it been more flooding this year than usual?
Yeah, but climate change doesn't exist,
Well,
especially at this time of the year.
but okay, that's about the sewers. Maybe the Ninja Turtles have just had it.
And April is like, get out of here.
She's not going to
April
cover
O'Neil.
it. She's not covering it
Well,
anymore.
with that,
On that very, very not fictional note,
welcome to episode
135.
135. How is everybody? Beto Friday. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Happy Friday indeed. I think we're on day 6,412 of the election recount.
Yes, and we'll get to that. We will get to that. We have a full packed episode.
Yes.
We will get to that. Oh boy, will we get to that. And but I want to actually leave that to like the end because
Okay.
I feel we've been very politically heavy.
That's
in the last
true.
couple of
I'm
episodes.
over politics. Like
Well-
I'm done.
Well, you shouldn't be.
I'm done.
You shouldn't be because that's
I'm
what gets
exhausted.
people in trouble.
I'm
So-
exhausted.
So how is everybody? How was everybody's week? Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for those of you in South Florida. It's been a wet week.
It's been a wet week.
La ETA.
Oh my God, la ETA.
La ETA. We're on the Greek alphabet. That's what this was.
Oh really?
Yeah, that's why it was La ETA. We already went through the whole alphabet. It was Tropical Storm ETA. We're on the Greek
I
alphabet.
hadn't even thought about it. Coronavirus.
Exactly. You're like, okay, whatever. We're just making shit up now.
So, okay. So there's something I wanted to discuss
Okay.
that I saw in the news. And when I immediately saw it, I thought about you.
Okay.
Viste lo que le pasó a la Britney?
What happened to Britney?
Oh, you didn't hear?
I told you, I am on a news blackout,
The judge.
like her album.
The judge did not remove her father from the conservatorship.
But he did. I know that he got rid of the manager.
Right, but the problem was in the manager.
No, but James got rid of the manager.
Yes, and she wanted the manager.
Oh, she wanted the manager
Yes,
and
she
not
did.
James.
Yes. Jamie
That's right.
Spears. She did not remove it, and Britney Spears and her attorney said that she will not perform until he is removed.
Really?
So I don't know that.
Now, my first question, when they say perform,
Does that mean doing an album?
oh, I'm more concerned about does that mean no more Instagram? Because that's entertaining as hell.
Well, no.
Okay,
I imagine
okay.
She probably means recording an album,
tours
promotion,
and- yeah.
touring,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
residency. That she will not. I don't laugh at the Britney Spears thing. I know it's
Because
very
something's
easy to
going
laugh
on there.
Because at the end of the day, she is a human being, and
Ahí pasó algo,
I feel
olvídate.
terrible for her. Ahí pasó algo. My concern about that, which I think it's most people's concern, is that type of conservatorship is very rare. Like
It's usually temporary.
it's temporary, but it's been going on for 12 years.
Right. Unless
So-
she's consistently
So
in,
here, my
in a mental
my
health
thing
facility
is,
or something.
There has to be something there that we don't know. Something regarding some type of mental illness that they found in her. Because I know a lot of times people look at her wacky Instagram posts now, right? But you have to remember that when she did all her Vegas residencies, she was under the
conservatorship.
The conservatorship. When she did the X Factor, she was under that. She's released all these albums, and she was very put together, very
Right. She was on a
professional.
path. Yes.
Right. She was very professional. Man, she did hundreds of shows in Vegas. You got to be on your A game to do that without canceling and stuff like that.
Yeah, because she never really canceled.
No, she didn't. And she's been
Yeah.
very busy,
Yeah,
in the last 10 years. She's been extremely busy. So I wonder, seriously, now if you look at her Instagram, she's a little loopy. But
she's always been kind of wacky.
But
She's always been a
for
nerd.
10 of the 12 years that she's had this conservatorship, she's been very much seemingly
Quote unquote, okay.
or on her A game and
Right.
working and
Right,
has
right.
her stuff together.
Focused.
It seems focused, exactly. So if even during that time it wasn't removed, it begs the question: what do we don't know?
Right. What don't we know?
She has to have some type of mental illness, like maybe schizophrenia, maybe bipolar 2.
Yeah.
Bipolar 1. Some type of that. Type of mental illness.
A couple of years ago,
Federline
got full custody of the kids.
Right,
which is another thing that
is odd.
Because ella siempre estaba con los niños.
Yes, that's why I believe, and especially because it's medical, so it's it's
HIPAA,
not privy,
it's private,
right?
Right.
It's not privy to be,
publicized.
Public. Pero ahí pasa algo. Ahí pasa algo, and the fact that her mom and her like siblings are cut out of this, and they've tried to get because her mom tried to get involved this time around.
Oh yeah,
and she wasn't able to. So ahí pasa algo.
Yeah,
ahí pasa algo. I hope she's okay.
Yeah, I just hope she's okay. At the end of the day, I mean, I'm a slight Britney fan, a little bit, but I'm also one of those Britney fans who's like, I'm not, blind to things. So it's not like I'm not on the free Britney bandwagon necessarily because I don't know enough. You know what I mean?
Listen,
like,
the argument again outwardly, the argument can be made that her dad, at a certain point in time, somebody needed to take control of her shit,
right?
Because in 2007, as we know, she kind of went bonkers. Whether and
you guys think 2020 is hard? 2007 was difficult for me.
She had a lot of reasons to,
right.
Because anybody who was in the situation that she was in back then would have cracked under pressure as well.
Right.
But again, it's been 12 years, so I mean, I'm not an expert in that, but what I do know and what I've read, I mean, again, for you to have a conservatorship over you, it means it needs to be that legally
you can't take care of yourself.
You can't take care of yourself.
Right.
That's kind of like having a guardian over you, or a ward. If you're a ward of the state, but that's different.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
No, I just hope she's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, I just want her to be better.
So
because we haven't even gotten a perfume from her. I mean, what kind of fantasy am I supposed to have in 2020?
No, but they did release a B-side of hers this week.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Available only in Urban Outfitters.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It doesn't, nowadays it's like, I mean, do you stop and realize that like these major, like recording artists, like Taylor Swift, I know you don't like her,
but she's a major artist.
She's a major. I mean, their exclusives are our Target.
Well, but that would make sense because that's like a huge retailer.
But you would think that back in the day that it would have been like a major music house.
True. It's funny. I was thinking about that the other day. I forgot what I was watching.
Which, by the way, Amoeba Music in LA has closed.
Oh, I know.
Our condolences.
I know.
But
they're moving somewhere else. I think they're changing location. It's a different, obviously it's a smaller location and all that, but I think they found another location.
That location was kind of like the point of it, right?
Yeah, I know. That's the whole point.
But Amoeba Music, rest in peace.
Yes.
At least for now.
Well, speaking of rest in peace, Alex Trebek is
passed. You know what?
That hurt.
That hurt more than I thought it was going to hurt.
That hurt up there with Regis.
Yeah. Yeah, it did.
In a way that I knew I'd be like, ay, pobrecito, and obviously he had pancreatic cancer, so we knew that it was a matter of time, but it was like, like the world feels a little darker.
You know why? Because Alex Trebek, similar to Regis, it's not only that we grew up watching him on Jeopardy. Alex Trebek, for how reserved he was, and even stoic, he was very original too. There's only one Alex Trebek.
That's true. That is true. And he's from that time when people were game show hosts.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking about this the other day. Actually, I was thinking...
it was like a career.
Right.
Show
like, when he passed away, I started thinking about it, but I also started thinking about... That's how, like, now every celebrity, because of Corona, has a podcast. Mm-hmm. Like, I just found out that Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson have a podcast.
Oh.
Sure, why not? But, like, now when you have a game show, it's like... Jane Lynch is hosting. Esta mujer on the Supermarket Sweep. Chris Harris. Like, they're not just hosts. It's like these actors, celebrities who are doing this. And I think that there's an art form to hosting. And you know what? We've mentioned this a couple times this year. No shade to her at all, but now that we're almost done with Dancing with the Stars, like, I don't like Tyra as a host of Dancing with the Stars, because I think that to be a good host, you have to be able to shine the spotlight on the contestants and on the thing that you're hosting, it's not about you, even though because you're the only constant, it becomes about you.
Yeah. Well, but that's
not
actually,
easy.
That's a great way of tying it back to Alex Trebek, because Alex Trebek never tried to steal the show, but Alex Trebek was Jeopardy.
There was never a doubt that it was his show.
Right.
Right.
And he couldn't have been more demure.
Yeah, well, he's also Canadian, so that helps.
Yeah, but I mean, like, when he shaved off his mustache, it was like a huge thing.
Yeah, seriously.
And he was so, like, again, quiet and demure about it, but there was something unique about Alex Trebek. And it's interesting because if you look at it, it's not like he was funny. It's not like he
wasn't even like necessarily dry humor. He was just himself.
And it was kind of comforting in a way.
Yeah.
And it was very uniquely him. That's why a lot of times when people become so popular and they're unique at something and you don't really know why, and that's part of like
the it factor.
The it factor.
Yeah.
You don't really know why, but
it makes sense.
I hope that show continues, because
it will. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. I know that his last show is going to air on Christmas Day. Mm-hmm. I actually think that this was something that's been in the works for a while. A couple months back, Ken Jennings actually became one of the producers on the show. Mm-hmm. So, and Ken Jennings has been doing some hosting on the Game Show Network. Mm-hmm. So I think he's probably going to transition into the host.
But have you heard that he is?
No. I'm just saying that it makes sense. I mean, fair. Look, no, whoever steps in is going to be because
I just think he doesn't really. And I don't mean this as an insult. He doesn't have camera presence at all.
I don't disagree with you, but I think that he will, at least if they pick him, it'll make sense. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just bring in, like, I don't know, Ryan Seacrest. You know what I mean? You have to bring in somebody who
I think that who
people feel comfortable with.
I think you could bring in somebody who's known for intellect, and
like a Ben Stein.
No, Ben Stein is too old already for that show. But somebody who's like known for being smart, like a
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
No, that's too smart. Like,
okay, so you see, it's hard.
It is. Anna Navarro.
I love Anna, but I don't know that I don't know if she's the right fit for the Jeopardy of it all.
Jeopardy.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Speaking of
Miss Navarro.
Well, not really about her, but
we're gonna use her as a transition.
I was thinking the other day, because I know you don't really watch sports, but you know that the NFL has
Dolphins.
continued.
They're doing really well.
Really? That's when you chime in?
Listen, they're doing well. And the only constant that I've seen this year between all of our teams doing well is that nobody has been in the audience to watch them.
I mean, all of our teams have done well this year.
They have, I'm saying.
So, and I was thinking, I'm like, I wonder how the Super Bowl, because technically there has to be a playoff.
Right, the winners
have to be a Super Bowl, whether they do a Super Bowl or not, There
has to be a game.
Right, there has to be a game. And I was thinking, I wonder if they're going to do a halftime show or whatever.
I thought of you.
¿Viste quién va a ser?
I thought of you.
Abel.
El fin de semana.
The weekend. I was like, I'm good. I'm good with this.
The minute that I saw it, I was like, I know that no matter what else happened today, Darian's happy.
Because I was like, tú era that after Jennifer Lopez and...
where do you go from there, really? I mean,
not where do you go, but...
That's a big spectacle.
But there was a lot of shit. The NFL got a lot of shit for having two Latino women.
Right.
God forbid two Latino women,
God forbid we have representation.
So I was like, maybe they're going to kind of go a little bit more country next year.
Reba or something.
They're going to have, like, what's the name? Billy Crosby, Nash, and Stills.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash?
Eso mismo.
I think two of them are dead.
Okay, they're going to have that, and I'm going to be like, okay, well, pass the dip. Or something like that. And I've really tried to like country music. I really have.
But you don't like any of it at all?
The country music that I like is not really country music. I don't think there's, like, for example, I love... From Tim McGraw, I love "Live Like You Were Dying."
Right. The song that he did with Nelly.
The song
Over and Over.
Be Humble and Kind.
Okay.
There's a few songs of him that I like.
Right.
But he's like pop country, and not his wife even.
No,
his wife is
I'll be out there. You might as well just say Shania Twain.
If there's dance remixes to your song,
you're not really that country.
And Yeah,
and as
she's
much
not
as Dolly is
entertaining. That
country,
doesn't-
Dolly's Dolly. She's her own
Right,
genre.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we went to see Dolly Parton and we loved her, but I feel that Dolly Parton, although it's country, she's an act on herself. Like,
Right.
She's in a whole other stratosphere.
She surpassed
by herself.
genre.
I really made an effort to like country because I've said this, I love songwriting. Like
And-
to
and
me,
country
it's
music is all about
and
it.
that is what country music is. But
Yeah.
I can't, that twang. I can't. I'd rather hear Jewel yodel.
She did a country album too.
I know. And so did Jessica Simpson.
That's true.
The only person who would do a country album and I would be interested to see
Okay.
what that sounds like would be Kelly Clarkson.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, Mariah Carey has country songs.
She does.
Yes, she does. Mariah Carey did a movie called Tennessee,
Oh, that's right. That's right.
which she did 2 country songs. One of them is with Willie Nelson.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't even get into those songs.
Okay, so listen, if Mariah can't make it happen for you, then you know what? Hasta ahí llegó la
She didn't
cosa.
make it happen.
And she has a whole song about making it happen.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
it
she
was
had like 2 songs from that soundtrack, and I was like, yeah.
Not good.
I mean, I have them downloaded, but whatever.
Right.
You know, but Kelly Clarkson would be interesting because let's face it, Kelly
she's
Clarkson
country.
can do anything.
That's and she is country. Like she's southern.
Yeah. She could do anything. She could be a game show host, a talk show host, an American Idol winner, a judge, a kick-ass singer, a great performer. You know what I love about her? You know that she in most of her shows, she'll do a cover.
She does a different cover every show.
So like there's covers galore.
Oh no,
of her.
and actually I think she puts it to the vote. Like when she's touring, she has I think on Twitter people suggest
and she does covers on her
every
daytime show.
She opens with a cover.
Yeah, and it's like, how can we have this in
Which
like
is
a compilation?
smart because I don't think that Kelly Clarkson. Most people who start a talk show start with a monologue, and I don't think that would be a strength for her.
No.
So it makes sense for her to go with her strengths.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did she ever get to launch her Vegas residency?
I don't think so. But then again, neither did Britney. But
That's true. Yeah, but
Full
Britney already
circle.
had one.
full circle. So, bueno, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay, I've gained a little bit of weight in the pandemic, but that's kind of cruel.
So, the election. And listen, we're only talking about the election more because of the president. If not, we wouldn't be talking about it.
We would have
anymore.
been gone already.
We
Like,
already
yeah.
had our election news
Yeah.
extravaganza
Yes.
episode.
And even though in this episode we are going to be speaking to a reporter from the New Yorker who's actually writing a piece on like Latino voters, and it's something that I think we've seen a lot of lately. Where like we said, you and I have been saying, like, beating the drum forever, where it's like, well, but they're not a monolith, and it's like, no, they're not. So I'm sure she'll dig into that a little bit more.
So let me ask you from a more lay perspective.
Sí, porque tú estás encasquetado en CNN all day long. You are.
I sort of am.
And it's not healthy.
It's between CNN, PBS.
No, it's CNN. Then
PBS
you go. Then
and
you go.
NBC.
Then you go to the View for your hour.
Right.
Then you go back.
Right, and then NBC, I watch NBC,
Right.
and at PBS, I watch PBS. And then, I go online and watch BBC.
Right.
Because I always watch the BBC.
Right.
'Cause
It cannot be good for your mental health.
No, but I love it.
That doesn't mean it's good for your mental health. People love meth.
Listen,
it doesn't mean it's good for them.
I can't feel my face when I'm watching the news, but I love it.
Okay, that song is about cocaine. Again,
Well, some
people love it,
some
but it's
people
not
do
good for
cocaine.
them.
I watch the news.
Okay, but it's not good for
Especially
them.
political stuff. Anyway, whatever. So, okay, from a lay perspective, what is your take on all this that's going on?
So none of it's surprising. I will say I've been taking like a news sabbatical. I mean, I'm not a news junkie the same way that you are, but I've been taking a bit of a sabbatical in the sense that, like, literally with the results, I would literally just go on Google and I'd be like, election results. They had a little chart, and I would look at the chart and I'd be like, okay, and then I'd go back and I'd go on to my own thing, right? Because I know that outside of that, the only thing that you're gonna hear is, this is fraud and this is wrong and we're still waiting and where's the count and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? Para oír a todo el mundo gritar y dar la misma vuelta por una semana, all I need to know is a number.
Okay.
And take it from there. So I tune in here and there just so that I'm not completely ignorant of what's going on. But I can't do it. I can't do it.
So,
I get more of my news from Billy Corbin lately than I probably should.
This is the type of stuff that like you can't make up. You heard about the thing with the press conference, right?
Oh, at the Four Seasons landscape?
That is amazing.
Yes, and in similar news, we're actually next week recording at Versailles, not the French one, not the restaurant, the abandoned house that lady has a documentary about.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, that's
that is amazing. Amazing that happened.
I have so many questions about that.
I love that they went ahead with it.
Because that's my question. I'm like, okay, you know,
why don't you do it at a park?
They didn't just show. That's the thing. They didn't just show up and be like, okay, here's a microphone and start talking, right? Like when a news story happens, the news reporters show up somewhere and it's just chaos. No, they had everything set up, which means that somebody had to arrive there.
So for those listeners who don't know what we're talking about, so a few days ago, the Trump administration, headed by
Rudy Giuliani,
wanted to have a press conference talking about the voter fraud, the
results,
voter fraud that has been going on, and what they were going to do to stop it. And Trump and a lot of people had texted that there was going to be a press conference
at the Four Seasons
Hotel at so and so time. This was, I believe, in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia.
Yeah. It was on a Saturday.
Yeah, and so everybody was like ready to go at the Four Seasons, and then these people come up on TV,
and then the press conference starts.
Like, really, like I don't know, it looked like an abandoned gas station.
Eso parece the section here in Miami of all the warehouses.
Yeah, some really ugly place, and this is where the Trump administration was having this very serious news conference, right? And it was at the Four Seasons Landscaping Company. They had done an error in booking. So here's my question to this.
So many questions.
So, hi, I'm calling from the White House.
Right. To have a press conference.
Did Janie on the other side be like, I'm going to go along with this?
I guarantee you that she was probably like, yeah, okay, a press conference. You know what? I'm not even going to fault the Four Seasons Landscaping people, right? Because de que ellos llamen y te digan, hey, you'll be like, okay, sí, bueno, está bien, ven. I don't know. You show up, right? But I'm wondering the person who showed, because they set things up. They put like a step and repeat. They had everything. The people who showed up, like, did somebody at one point get there, like that first, event coordinator get there and call and be like, did you mean the Four Seasons? Like Adela, será la misma calle 8 que yo conozco, right? Like, it's like, we're here, but I don't think it's the right place. Like, did somebody make that call to try and clarify? And then they were told, I don't have time. Just do it. And then, because that's how I can see that this may have happened.
I'm going to go ahead and assume there was a breakdown in communication.
I'm going to go ahead and assume as well, because I don't think that nestled ever so nicely between a crematorium and a porn shop is the ideal spot. Although,
it is 2020.
It is 2020. Why not?
They are trying to appeal to a larger demographic of voters.
This is true. You know what? Why not?
People that like porn, could be Republicans.
That's also very weird to have a crematorium next to a porn shop.
Rent is cheap in those parts of town.
That is true.
It's not like anybody's gonna give
the dead aren't gonna complain about the ambiente in the porn shop.
Exactly. So yeah, they go ahead and make these allegations of voter fraud. Right. So, in my personal Instagram, earlier this week I posted a video because I had gotten a lot of people DMing me and asking me what I thought about the whole thing with the voter fraud and the election, which I felt very flattered that people were coming to me to ask me this. And I pretty much said, which I went into detail in my Instagram video, and I kind of touched upon last week in our podcast episode. I think he should sue all 50 states. I think he should sue everyone. Sue. Why?
Studio?
Exactly. Sue everybody. Sue everybody and their mother. La abuela, la vecina. Sue everybody. Because when you sue for fraud, you have to sue with... Your complaint has to have particularity in it. And there's 5 elements to fraud. Okay. So you have to specifically put instances of...
Do you know what they fraud. Are? What the 5 particularities are?
Well, I'm not going to go into for fraud, intent
to defraud.
To defraud. I'm not going to go into
okay.
You know, That's like law school 101 in terms of fraud.
Okay.
Right? There's 5 elements to fraud.
Fraud is one of the hardest ones to prove, right?
Because you have to
because
plead
you can't
with
just show up.
particularity.
You can't just show up and be
Right.
like, fraud.
Right. You have to plead with particularity. So, for example, in this particular case, you would say, okay, in Pennsylvania, I'm suing the Pennsylvania state attorney or the elections department. Okay. Here are my allegations of fraud. On November 3rd, there was a ballot of a person that was deceased, and this person's vote was counted in the general election. Attached here to the complaint is Exhibit A of the ballot.
Okay.
Paragraph number 2.
Step 1, step 2, step 2,
Right,
step
paragraph
sub
number 2.
step A.
Attached here to as Exhibit B is a ballot of somebody who didn't live in the state and still was counted.
Okay.
Please see attached Exhibit B. So that's why complaints sometimes have like 5,000 pages because of all the exhibits. So if you're going to plead voter fraud, you have to show specific instances of first-hand fraud. Not, oh, I heard, or oh, I saw, or oh, they weren't letting me look through the window. That's not voter fraud. That's not voter fraud.
Got it.
Right? So I believe that as of the time we're recording this on Fake Friday, 12 of his lawsuits have already been dismissed.
Yes, and I believe, and you obviously are more versed in this than I am, I believe that there are even some cases where there are GOP lawyers in the states, like representatives or GOP attorney generals and things like that.
In both Georgia and
Michigan, was it?
In both Georgia and in Arizona. They are Republicans,
and they're saying there's no evidence.
There's no evidence of voter fraud,
right?
And they're Republicans,
right?
A lot of Republicans have already come. Karl Rove, of all people,
wow,
yes, Karl Rove, Mitt Romney, a lot of other Republicans that I can't think of their name now have already said like, hey, like the writing's on the wall.
Has the human skin tag said anything?
Which one?
Mitch McConnell.
No, Mitch McConnell is like...
He said something that was like, we hope it'll seem this.
They need to count the vote, and he has a right to investigate.
So
Which he does.
He's not wrong, right?
He does. He has a right. And honestly, I do think he should sue. I think he should sue so he could get it out of his system. Right. So then when all the courts dismiss his action, which they will.
Right.
They will. 12 of them already have, right? Then now he's probably going to attack the courts. So now it's like, oh, the courts of all these states, the judges,
again,
the courts,
everybody's against me,
as well as the counties and the state attorneys of each state, and everybody, is this grand conspiracy against me, right? Right. It's like, man, people don't have that much time, Donald, like,
or that much care.
Right. Like,
even the Proud Boys said they didn't care that much.
Right. They did.
Well, when the voter intimidation of the emails, that the guy came out and he's like, it wasn't us because honestly, we don't focus our efforts on that. We don't care that much. So
I think there are some people, some people, Republicans, who I think that when these cases get dismissed, I'm talking about voters, Republican voters. Right. I think that for some of them, it's going to be enough and be like, okay, well, there wasn't any voter fraud. I think there's people who, no matter what, are going to believe it.
Because there are people who can't... and this is the thing with a lot of people who are... And when I say people who are his supporters, I'm talking about like diehard MAGA people, right? I'm not talking about followers. I'm not talking about your average Republican, right? Who may vote down the ticket and not necessarily down the candidate. There are people... Sorry, one second. It's people who they cannot admit they're wrong because if they have to say that they are wrong, then they don't want to accept what that implies in terms of having to reflect on everything else that they may have been wrong about.
Right, because it's what I told you.
And forget about politics. I'm talking about their life.
Some episodes back.
I'm talking about their life.
The problem with this election, among the many problems, was that a lot of people were voting emotionally and not rationally.
They were not voting for Trump or for Biden. They were voting against Trump and against Biden.
Right, and the people that were voting for Trump, they were going to win. They were going to win, and they were going to show everybody that they won because they're winners and everybody else is a loser, according to the president. So it wasn't even so much about like rationality. Right. It was of like, I'm going to win. So now, and also with him, like he said he was going to do this. Like, why are we
That's why I'm not surprised.
He's been saying this for months.
Since like 2016, yeah.
Mind you, mail-in ballots have always existed. There were mail-in ballots during the Civil War, right? He himself has always voted mail-in.
Right.
Right? So, and there has never been a mail-in ballot issue. Why?
Right.
Because voter fraud, at the end of every election, there's always like an audit of voter fraud. And I think, I forgot if it was after the midterm election of 2018 or the presidential general election of 2016, that the voter fraud was 0.0003. Right, because there may be specific instances of voter fraud.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was reading up on an instance in Georgia where they were investigating because I believe that like some lady who had died like a year ago was being, she had voted essentially.
Right.
That happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen.
It happens in every election.
And also there's probably instances where, like what you were saying, it's not fraud, but it's a, you forgot to sign your
There is voter
vote.
fraud in every election.
Of course.
But one thing is there to be specific individual cases of voter fraud.
And another thing is a widespread epidemic.
Conspiracy of voter fraud along, 6, 7, 8 states that can overturn an election.
I will say this, and I'm not a big fan of her politically, Deborah Messing, but I did see a tweet of hers this week that somebody posted on Instagram, saying, okay, so if all of these votes are invalid, do we then also have to recount the ones where the Republicans won the Senate?
Because that's what I was going to say.
Because
a second ago I was going to say, but I bet you they're not contesting,
where he won.
Where he won, where they flip seats or gain seats in Congress. I bet you they're not talking about those.
Right. Those are legitimate.
Right? I think that a lot of people, because people keep asking like, the writing's on the wall. He lost. Why are people still clinging? Because I think that he showed that Trumpism is a movement. And now there's talk that maybe he could run for president in 2024.
I was actually going to ask you. He can, theoretically, right? Because you can only serve 8 years.
Cleveland.
But I'm saying you can only serve 8 years total. Doesn't have to be consecutive.
Right. Grover Cleveland, 21 and 23.
So if he was to run again, and let's say he wins, after that he can't run again. Okay, so you can't. It doesn't have to be consecutive 8 years.
Politically, it would be
weird.
Politically, it'd be a disaster because from the moment you got elected that you're a lame duck. Right? So from the moment you got elected, you're only serving 4 years. So that creates that creates a set of challenges that
the only thing that could be good is if he runs as a third party, as his own party.
No.
It could be interesting. But it could be interesting in the sense that it might open us up to accepting or the potential of a 3-party
No, he's going to run as a Republican. That's why so many Republicans, he's keeping score on who's with him and who's...
That's why Mitch McConnell has said what he has said in the way that he has said it.
Yeah. So he's keeping score, and who knows what a mess it's going to be. But even if he loses and is out of, Joe Biden becomes the president, which he will, he's not going to shut up. And his people are not going to shut up. His followers.
This is not... I mean, look, this is over in the sense of, okay, next president. But it's not over.
Oh, no.
And I will say this, though. Being a former president is so much better than being a president. He gets to be paid for the rest of his life. He gets to criticar todo lo que quiere. And whatever happens is not my fault. Sign me up.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's see what happens. I mean, it's so funny because people are like, the Supreme Court is good. People talk about the Supreme Court like if they wrote the doctrine and they wrote the rules, but that's like everything else,
People are all political experts now who up until 3 years ago didn't know anything.
When I heard people talking about packing the courts, it's like I went to law school. And I think I heard that term once. Because
I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I had to look it up.
It's something that has not been done in over 150 years.
Right.
And like most attorneys, most people that studied law or political science don't even know what packing the courts is. But people were talking about packing the courts, like if they wrote the doctrine.
The Flores Act.
Oh, yeah. With the Flores.
How many experts on the Flores Act did
everybody. Because under the Flores Act, I'm like, what are you talking about? They became experts on packing the court. Like, because Joe Biden's going to pack the court. That's what he's going to do. He's going to pack the court. I'm like, do you even know what that means? Like, or how to do that? Like, whatever. But, well, to continue this conversation.
Yes. So we have with us Stefania Taladrid. I hope I pronounced her name correctly, from the New Yorker, and she kind of shadowed you for a little bit, right?
Shadowed me for
While you
several
were
days when I
while
was
you were on the
Vancouver.
campaign trail.
She did. That's how we met.
That's how you guys met, and she works for the New Yorker, and she's writing I'm sure she'll give us more detail, but it's an article about essentially the Latino vote and how important it is and how it's impacted in this election, with a specific focus on Florida. So here's our chat.
Hey everyone, it's DJ, and it's not an exaggeration to say that 2020 has been literally just a little nuts, right? Pero that's no reason to let your nuts go wild. Bueno, Manscaped is here to help. Look, we've been telling you about Manscaped and their line of products all year long, specifically Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0 hair trimmer. But they've got a lot more products for you down there. Manscaped's Crop Care Kit is the ultimate hygiene pack for your dirty bits. The Crop Care Kit includes the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, no explanation there, the Crop Reviver Ball Toner with a touch of aloe, for smoothness and freshness, and the Crop Mop Ball Wipes for when you need a quick refresh, after a long and steamy humid day in Miami, and the Foot Duster Foot Deodorant. Because, us guys, our feet always kind of sort of stink. Unless you're always in chancletas like me. But anyway, all free of sulfates, dyes, and parabens, so your boys are in good hands. So use promo code PERO20 at manscaped.com to get 20% off your order and free shipping. 20% off to keep your balls fresh, huh? Bueno, pues claro. So visit manscaped.com today and use promo code PERO20 for 20% off the Crop Care Kit or any other purchase.
So welcome back, listeners. So as we said, we have with us today Stefania Taladria, contributing writer for The New Yorker. She basically did something that I think only I have done, which is spend a hell of a lot of time with Darian while she was down here covering the election. So welcome to the show, Stefania.
Thank you. It's so great to be with you guys.
No, thank you. It's great to have you. I know that it's kind of nuts. The election it feels like it's still going on, right? Like in some weird way.
Yeah.
So
Still our president recognizes the outcome. I think it's still going on.
We're still in election hangover mode, as it were.
Yeah.
So I know that one of the reasons that you came down here with the New Yorker was to write about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like the Latino vote in Florida. I'm assuming with a focus to some degree in South Florida, just because of the whole Cuban American element and all that. Can you tell us what was the initial crux of the angle that the story was going to take? Because actually we've been chatting a little bit, and there's been a bit of a shift. But what was the initial impetus to get you down here and the New Yorker's interest?
So the first story that I was pursuing was about disinformation among the Cuban American community. And I kept hearing from Carlos Odio at X Research, they're a big research firm that focuses on the Latino vote, about a substantial shift among the post-95 generation, the post-95 Cuban generation, right? So we're talking about recent emigres who got to South Florida after 95, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. And so these were people who supported Obama in 2008, supported him again in 2012, and even voted for Clinton. And there's been a substantial shift in their support for the Democratic Party in the past few years. So essentially a shift of more than 30 points to the Republican Party. And so when I learned about that, I frankly found that fascinating, and we wanted to learn more about, what was behind that shift, because there's a lot of talk about, younger Cuban generation being much more liberal than their elders. And so that seemed to be kind of going against what everyone presumed, right? And so in the focus groups that X Research did, they kept hearing about this guy, which I'm sure you know, Otaola, right?
Oh, yes, I read a piece on him. Yeah.
Yes, and they kept hearing about him, and he kept coming up, and a lot of these people kept just parroting some of his talking points, right? The fact that Biden was a communist, the fact that, a victory, his victory would lead the country to into the path of socialism. All of these notions that are, of course, false, but like people tend to believe it, right? And so I went to his show and kind of looked into what was behind the shift. And of course, it doesn't just, has to do with Otaola. I mean, there are so many other reasons behind this. But he's kind of a product of that shift. And that was the first story that I did. And the second one was about Biden's support among the non-Cuban communities living in South Florida, the Latino non-Cuban communities. Because, when I wrote this piece, this was towards the end of October, the campaign still disputed this fact, but it was pretty clear that the Cuban-American vote was lost to Donald Trump.
The Biden campaign was disputing that.
Yes.
Okay.
I think they were, and it's their job to do so, right? Because they were fighting for every vote, and of course they weren't going to recognize that or give up on the Cuban vote at that.
Yeah, no se pueden dar por vencido,
Exacto. And so, but of course, the Puerto Ricans, who I don't think a lot of people recognize that the number of Puerto Rican eligible voters in Florida is actually bigger than the number of Cuban American voters in Florida, right? They just don't vote as frequently. And they, of course, don't have as much, of a political, I don't know.
Shall we say?
Yeah, I think that's right. That's exactly how the best way to put it. And so I started looking into these different diasporas, the Puerto Ricans, but also, we're talking about more than close to 20 diasporas, the Mexicans, of course, the Colombians, the Ecuadorians, and others, and many of them are more democratic leaning. Mm-hmm. And so there was really an opportunity there for the Biden campaign to just capitalize on their support and appeal to them, right? And make up for the losses among the Cubans. And so that was the second piece. And the third piece, which was TBD, based on the outcome of the election, but ended up being about what went wrong in Florida. And it's a partial answer, because I think that we don't yet know exactly, what happened and what went wrong. And I'd hope that this is a moment of reckoning for the Democratic Party in the state, and a moment to really look into, what led to such disastrous losses, right?
The Monday morning quarterback is going to take a while to get the results.
But what I kept hearing from members of the Latino outreach team in the state was that they didn't have enough resources. And at the beginning, the first time that I heard about this, I was just like, what do you mean, right? And I said, what's your budget? And they would turn to me and say, like, no budget. And that was just, I didn't even know what to respond, because it made no sense to me, because we were talking about one of the most important battleground states. We were talking about a team that was in charge of turning out 17% of the state's electorate.
Wow.
And they were telling me that, they had no allocated fixed budget to work with, right?
And this was the state in general, not just South Florida.
Correct. Yeah. So that was pretty much the focus of the third piece. I conducted several interviews and gathered several documents from them, which proved the fact that not only did they not have a budget, but that they were pretty much begging for resources for weeks, if not months, and that the resources, when they came in late, and that, of course, they were insufficient. Because if there's one thing we know about the Latino electorate, is that we love to be courted, right? And we like to be courted with time, and not just see kind of a last-minute effort that feels rushed and incomplete and ineffective, frankly. So that was those are some of the stories that I've been pursuing here, and there's so much more to say, right? It's, as you know better than I do, it's such a fascinating state, and it's so complex, and the political dynamics are just fascinating.
Yeah, that's barely the highlight reel.
I want to go back to the whole issue with disinformation. Because we know there's disinformation on all fronts.
What are you talking about? I just put bleach in my veins the other day, and I have COVID free for
what you've done your fair share of investigating and writing, and you've been around the world, so you're not naive to these type of things. What would you say in terms of disinformation specifically to Florida or even the Cuban community, what would you say surprised you the most?
The fact that people believe those things, you know, I mean, it's
Have you seen something similar in other countries?
Yes. So Spain is an interesting comparison, right? Because for a long time, the party, for many reasons, did not have a far-right party. And in the past few years, we've seen the emergence of a far-right party called Vox. And a lot of what they do just focuses on disinformation, right? And they've scapegoated the immigrant community, and they've tried to disseminate all sorts of false notions about, you know, immigrants and the crime rates associated with them and others. But it's not as intense and as systemic as it is here, right? Because here it's not just what you can find, say, on social media, or what you know, is exchanged via WhatsApp or these types of, you know, messaging platforms, right? When you tune into Radio Mambi, you hear the same notions, right? And so it's that's appalling to me. The fact that it's not just Otaola. Again, I mean, it's just, you know, all of these different actors from different walks of life who are just kind of all, you know, rallied around the same false notions. And it's been very sad to see that at a time when we're going through a deadly pandemic, we're living through a recession, and yet, you know, the race in Florida has not been about policy issues, right? I mean, you have hardly heard about policy here. It's all about ideology and who's a comunista and who isn't, right? And so I think that has been the most helpful finding, that people actually believe this, and firmly so. And you realize that at the end of the day, their reactions to many of these debates are fundamentally visceral, right? That you're engaging with people at an emotional level, not at a rational level.
Yes,
and
you said that. Yeah.
You know, no matter how hard you try to present the facts to them and have a calm conversation over just ground reality, right? And it's impossible because the basic facts you can agree on. And you know, I met, when I was reporting on that piece about Otaola, I also met with Gennady. I don't know if you heard of him. He leads the website 23 Plague, and that's essentially a project that what he's trying to do is counter the disinformation that's coming from people like Otaola, right? And so he has kind of like, it's a new project, and it's a very noble one, right? And so they have some beautiful opinion pieces and columns and others, kind of with controversial issues, right? Like, nos molesta los cubanos de Black Lives Matter and things like that. And so instead of just like ignoring those issues, which are thorny, incredibly thorny, right? Trying to engage with them and get at the bottom of it, but from a perspective of truth and reality, right? I guess what's been most striking is just to see that many of the debates that we're having seem taken from the 80s and the 70s, right? I mean, it seems as if we weren't living in 2020. I don't know how it feels like for you guys. I mean, you're Cubans. How do you experience that?
Frustrating.
Well, look, so the attack of communism and socialism among Cubans has always existed.
It's not new.
Because
Demócratas son socialistas, that's it.
Just the other day, I saw this movie by a documentary called 537 Votes by Billy Corgan, who's a Miami native, and it's about the 2000 election, and they talked a lot about the issue of Elian Gonzalez, and you know, that's an example. I bring up that example because that was already 20 years ago, believe it or not. And, you know, in the documentary, they show how anybody who strayed away from the conventional opinion that Elian should stay here and not be returned to his father was a communist. Because that's something that has always kind of been a defense mechanism, if you will, among the Cuban community, that if you don't agree with them, you're a communist.
Más tarde o más temprano todo termina en comunismo.
What I had never seen for a presidential election was how not only did it reach the heights that it did, but with the candidate that it did. Because if, for example, Bernie Sanders, if he would have been the nominee, even if Bernie Sanders, we know that he talked about socialism as to the welfare state, not a form of government in essence, only to the welfare state. I could have understood the mixed signaling a little bit more among the Cuban or Venezuelan community. But you're talking about Joe Biden, who has been in public service for over 45 years and often was criticized by his own party for not being liberal enough. So I just found it, fascinating, but at the same time depressing and just frustrating that not only was it a major campaign of disinformation, but a completely made up narrative about this man.
Exactly. And as Gennady told me when I was speaking to him, he told me, en la ausencia del diálogo se extingue la democracia. O sea, in the absence of dialogue, there's no democracy.
And I also think that, and I'm sure you definitely saw this in your coverage here, that these people that were Trumpers, especially the Cubans, who were so obsessive with Trump, it wasn't about them being active Republicans and believing in conservative the conservative values or the more conservative platform of the Republican Party and wanting to advance those narratives. It was about Trump. Trompista, the same way that they were Chavistas and the same way that they were Fidelitas, people that become obsessed with the person and the platform is secondary. It's about the person. So that's what I'm sure you noticed that, but that's one of the things that I find the scariest.
And I saw that very clearly when I was shadowing you, at the different polling sites. And it was also scary because I don't know if we can call it voter intimidation. It's hard. It's a different category. It's a tricky category, right? Because I do think that it keeps some voters away from the polls. Just that level of vehemence, that level of vitriol. I have never seen anything like that. Just being shouted at and in some cases physically attacked just because you're supporting another candidate when you're trying to cast your ballot. What country do we live in, right? Yeah. That's something very palpable here, and which I don't see in New York because obviously we're a blue state and demographics and everything and the politics are very different. But here, just the level of polarization among people is just something that's very worrisome. And I think that it will be up to you to figure out how to, build bridges.
In your reporting, I know you said that they're still trying to figure it out, right? The Democratic Party is still trying to figure out, quote unquote, what went wrong. Have you seen anything, at least initially, to suggest, what constituted the change that they were seeing, as you said, in the post 95 exiles, were leaning more Democrat, and all of a sudden it was just like whoosh, completely. Is it just that rhetoric? Because it's one thing to have that rhetoric amongst, the recent arrivals, right? Shall we say? Mm-hmm. But if you were born and raised here, you grew up with the trauma and you grew up with the rhetoric as we did, but it's a little different. You know what I mean? You can't, you're speaking to people who didn't really firsthand experience. And in some cases at this point, we're already starting to get on second generation, Cuban Americans, right? What do you think is the initial, is it just as simple as what you were saying? Like they just didn't spend enough money or they haven't figured out their own version of the secret sauce?
So with the post-95 generation, something that's quite interesting is that someone made the case to me that this generation was very malleable. They come from a totalitarian system, and they've been taught growing up that the way to succeed in life is to align themselves with power, right? And so there's this notion that they'll support whoever is in power. And so the Democrats were in power in 2008. The Democrats were in power in 2012. They supported Obama's then. And then suddenly Trump comes in and they figured that, maybe their best bet is to support him too. And that may, again, I mean, there's so much left to study that these are mere hypotheses, right?
Right.
But I think they're grounded in history. They're grounded in some of the the living experiences of these recent immigrants, and I think that's an interesting phenomenon, right? The other point too is that this is a point that Guillermo Grenier, the head of the Cuba poll at FIU, made to me, and when we were talking about this, he said, one of the issues is that the Democratic Party is nowhere to be seen. And again, it was one of those answers that made me, wonder, what do you mean they're nowhere to be seen? Again, we're talking about such an important state. And so the idea that the Democratic Party would not have a strong enough presence here was very difficult to wrap my head around that, right? But it seems that, Republicans have a much more robust ground game in the state, and that they've been able to groom voters in a way early on, and to engage them in the political process, and to give the sense that belonging, that supporting the Republican Party comes with a certain sense of belonging for a recent immigrant, right? And that they'll be supported by the party. The party will be there to protect them, right? And if you think about that, that's kind of what they're playing on at a rhetorical level, right? When they say, we'll make sure that socialism never reaches the United States, nor does communism, and we'll protect our democracy, our freedom, to make sure that, nothing like what you fled takes place here. Again, that's why I've read a lot of articles that when looking at this, just frame it from the perspective of, look at Otaola, how successful he's been, and he's behind this shift. And I don't think that's the case. I think he's a product of the generation. He's a product of the shift, and he's been able to exploit it. And he himself kind of fits that profile very, very well, because he was a registered Democrat. And but again, I mean, when you look at this beyond the surface level, you realize that there's a historical component behind this, that you need to understand where these people are coming from, right? And you need to also understand, the ecosystem that they find when they come to South Florida.
I think a big part of it, excuse me, at the end of the day is a big takeaway for others. I don't think necessarily for us, is the realization that Latinos are not a monolith. I keep seeing that headline, and it's, again, like I say, it's not a surprise to us. You know what I mean? We know that Cubans are not the same as Mexicans, are not the same as Venezuelans, are not the same as Argentinos. It's not, we have commonalities, language, religion, some of our, just cultures, our, certain things, of course, but you can't just, to what you even said earlier, it's like what you appeal to a Cuban is not going to work to a Mexican, from a political message. And I think on some level, the belief, at least up until this year, and it'll probably, the thought will probably go away, because these revelations tend to only come and go when they're relevant to the happenings, is that, we can't just talk to all these people the same way.
Frankly, tired of those headlines in a way, I mean, and I still see them. If you look them up this year, there are outlets who are still making the case, Latinos are not a monolith.
It was all over the place on election night on CNN.
Yeah.
Oh, Florida, because it's a complicated vote. It's like, really?
Tell me about it.
Exactly, and this year, for the first time in this country's history, we are the largest minority voting group, right? And the fact that we're still kind of, not we, but that the media and some of the leadership in the parties, in the different parties, are still thinking of us that way, is really surprising to me, and quite disappointing, frankly, too. Because you'd think that, given that we've been here for decades, and that we're not first generation or second generation, right? And that, we're still kind of grappling with these basic fundamental issues of, are Latinos on the list? Well, of course not. And, that's been the finding of every single election for the past decades, right? So the fact that we don't seem to get through those, overcome those notions and look beyond them is something that I still, again, don't quite understand. And I think it has something to do with the makeup of the parties too. and the lack of representation and the lack of Latino leadership, right? Because if you don't have a diverse leadership, then who will be the people making that?
I'm shocked, but not shocked with what you mentioned to us about the whole, budget analysis
or lack thereof,
that Florida had, because I'm starting to think I just can't imagine a single political consultant in the world that would just tell them like,
don't worry about it.
Don't worry about Florida. We lost Florida.
Yeah. Did the results from last Tuesday surprise you?
Specifically of Florida? I knew Florida was going to go red. I was hoping that Dade County stayed blue. Miami-Dade County stayed blue, which it did, but it stayed blue by a much larger margin than it did in 2016. By a much smaller margin, than it did in 2016. So no, it didn't surprise me, because the Cuban community and specifically and the Venezuelan community were enabled. I mean, they were ready to go. They were activated. They were ready to go. They had their stuff together, whether it was caravans. There were a lot of caravans or community events. Just to give you an idea here, Tropical Park is a major park here in Miami.
Very major thoroughfare
on a very big street.
Yeah.
In the past 4 years, since Trump has been president,
Sin Fayad,
every weekend there are about 20 to 30 to 40, maybe even 50 people every weekend with Trump flags there. Every weekend. For no reason. It's not an election year. Nothing's going on. But they have consistently been there. Yep. So, and I've never seen that before down here.
No,
ever.
At all. So, during elections, yes. But not just any random. Not just like, this is what we do on Saturday.
And that has been here. So no. And it wouldn't have surprised me if Miami-Dade County would have gone red. How your job as a reporter, I mean, I guess I know the answer to this, but to hear it, specifically from you, you're a reporter for, you work in part for the New Yorker, which is such a staple to.
It's an institution.
An institution.
I mean, let's face it. Let's call it what it is. It is an institution.
How difficult, or how much more difficult, is your job nowadays?
In terms of what exactly?
In terms of just reporting and people either not wanting to speak to you because you're media, or you're news or fake news, or even when you report something and you have sources and all that, any blowback that you might get from just people not wanting to accept what it is that you have to report.
Oh yeah. I mean, that comes up all the time, especially among Trump supporters. There's, they don't trust the media. There's the sense that, especially, the New Yorker, the New York Times, we're all, far left outlets who do not, report the truth. And that's what people have come to believe. So we're in a post media outlets era, right? And people just believe what they see on social media and others, and many just don't have trust in us anymore, right? And so it's difficult, because something that you think is a means of introducing yourself to a source can actually have the opposite reaction, the opposite effect among them. And so it's tough, and I think especially when you're trying to be as neutral as possible and to report, both sides of the story, right? And not just speak to democratic voices, but also get a sense of what's happening on the other side. Because a lot of people, again, specifically with Latino voters, they think, wow, if you're Latino and you support Trump, you must be crazy, right? And I think we need to be very careful with just thinking about his supporters that way, and just, thinking that they're not even worth engaging, because who would support a president that has scapegoated their communities, humiliated them? But unless we try to listen to the other side and kind of try to understand what's going on and what's driving that support for the president, again, we'll never going to be able to build bridges among groups, right? And so it's definitely a challenge. I mean, a lot of people just don't want to speak to you, and you need to find a way to make sure that they feel at ease, and that I always tell them that we have a very robust fact-checking process, which is true. And so that means that before we go to press, they'll hear from our fact-checking department, and they'll know exactly what's going to print, right? And that always puts them at ease, because they kind of feel that they're a bit more in control of the content, right? But it's tough. I mean, they were not respected anymore, and we're much more blamed than trusted nowadays.
Well, I can with firsthand knowledge say that Steph was out there interviewing people, talking to people on both sides,
right.
And it was great to see, journalism in action
happening right there in front of you. Well, Steph, I know you're busy, and I know you actually have a meeting coming up. But before we let you go, I have to ask you the question that all of our listeners want to hear. What was it like shadowing Darian? Across all those polls, was he a good Miami representative? Did he bring you pastelitos de guayaba? Did he do his due diligence as a Miami Cuban American?
That's exactly the first thing we did, actually. Yeah. We met in Kendall, right? That was our first stop. We met in Kendall, and then he had set up his tent there and was just waiting for his volunteers to show up. You had been waiting for like an hour, right?
Yeah,
he got there at
that early after 10, yeah.
That's not dedication. I don't know what is, but yeah. And so obviously there was pretty much no one else around there except us. And the first thing he said, let me treat you to some pastelitos and some delicious coffee, and that's what we did.
I had to get the pastelitos in there.
But you presented them to the world of pastelitos. Exactly.
Yeah. No, and I think what was most interesting about that is that you realize that volunteers are really on the front lines of all of this, right? I mean, they don't get as much credit as they deserve in a way, because they're the ones who must, deal with the insults and the vehemence of some of the Trump supporters and the attacks also, and just make sure also that voters know what to do, right? And so the level of responsibility that's attached to that position is quite high, right? And just thinking that we're in an election where a volunteer is not just there to inform, but also to protect, and also to protect him or herself from whichever attacks may come his or her way, is kind of crazy, right? And it's something that we saw when we were in Westchester, when we were in Kendall, and so I mean, my deepest admiration to these people, right? Because they're the heroes of the story in a way, and especially, again, we can't forget that we're in the middle of a pandemic still, right? And so just being there, they're exposed to criticism, to insults, to a lot, and on top of that, to infection, right? And so it's not an easy job, and especially given the political conditions, it was made all the harder. But it was wonderful to see that these people were just unrelenting, and were there every single day at 5:45, eating pastelitos, having I love that, the cup of coffee with the sticker that said cafecillo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I think voters owe a great deal to them. So it was a very, very, very fun experience.
Well, it was great having you. And I loved it because it's not every day you get to have like a really like intellectual conversation.
Yeah, he was like, I met this really cool person. Her name is Steph. She works for the New Yorker, and we're totally having her on the show. And I was like, okay, send me her text, and we'll coordinate something. Very excited.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. No, so thank you so much for stopping by. So all of your articles are currently available to be read at thenewyorker.com. I'm assuming, and they can probably find it just by looking up your name. Like if they do a search on the New Yorker, your articles will pop up, and just like those, I'm sure you've got many, many, many other just as fantastic articles on the New Yorker that they can find.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and safe travels back to New York, because I know you're still in Miami, but safe travels back.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to speak with you.
And we're back.
Yeah. So you saw her on the floor, like in the trenches. What was it like to watch somebody, cover our fair city that way? Like, in the midst, because you were exposed to like a lot of just media coverage going on all around you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, Steph is she's a very cultured person. She is of Mexican descent, but she's lived in Europe. I think she was raised in Spain or in some part of Europe. She's lived in New York. She's lived in a lot of places. She's a very cultured person. So, she's seen her fair share of craziness. But, I explained to her, I tried to explain to her the best that I could, the Cuban, especially
the nuances
of being Cuban, why Cubans are so anti-socialism and communism, but at the same time trying to make sense of this,
right,
which makes no sense.
You were trying to pack like 60 years of experience into a day.
So I mean, but she's a professional, so she's seen her share of crazy.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure.
But it was great. It was great because she and her boyfriend are amazing. So he's awesome. I had a lot of conversation with him, like very good conversation with him as well. And, it was just very kind of refreshing to see such, cultured and professional people. And so thank you, Steph, so much.
Yes,
I can't wait to read the article. So
no, if it's true, your name's going to be in the New Yorker. Look at you. Wait till I tell Esther. Tell me about your son who's a doctor. Mine's in the New Yorker.
Anyway, so I want to give my last soda to... it's this lady named Martha C. Gonzalez.
Okay.
She passed away a couple of weeks ago or some time ago. And I want to give the last soda to her and to the moment that she gave everybody, because now especially, that we're so divided over this election and people are just so bitter, and the thing with COVID, I think it was a tragic but beautiful moment. And I'm talking about the video that went viral this week of the lady with Alzheimer's who is a ballerina.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen it?
No.
Oh, well, when we finish here, you're going to see it. So it's this video that went viral of this woman who had very advanced Alzheimer's. She actually passed away already. Very, very advanced Alzheimer's. And she was a ballerina, and she did Swan Lake. And when they played the music for her, she knew all the movements.
She just went back there.
She did all the movements, the hand gestures, everything.
Wow.
According to time, according to the song.
Wow.
And it was amazing because here she was. She had...
Yeah, she has Alzheimer's. I mean, it's
advanced Alzheimer's, and this happened. And I just think the video went viral and people responded to it. It just was a very human moment in a time where we're not seeing a lot of humanity.
Right.
So I just wanted to give a Coke, a refreshment, and acknowledge that moment because, as I always say, it's moments like that as bad as things are sometimes, and you're like, oh my gosh, we're doomed. There's always like little moments you find that it's like, oh wow, as terrible as we can also be quite wonderful. So
yeah. Well, I also picked for my last soda somebody who demonstrates, I think, the strength of the human spirit and determination. My last soda is going to a gentleman by the name of Chris, and I hope I pronounced his last name properly. Nikic. It's Nikic. So he is actually the first person with Down syndrome to compete in Ironman triathlon.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
This kid, or this man, I don't know his age. He is a Special Olympics athlete, a Special Olympian. He finished a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike ride, and a 26.2 marathon run in Panama City Beach. That's where the Ironman Florida competition was. I get winded when I swim to the other side of a pool. So this kid, like, you know what? He said that's what I'm gonna do, and that's my goal, and he achieved it. And you know, similar to what you were saying, those are the moments we have to look at as a society. You know, look to the human moments and those moments of human accomplishment. You know, because this guy's got Down syndrome. How many times in his life must he have been told, "Oh, you'll never do that.
Yeah, you can't do that.
You'll never do that. You'll never do that." And basically, he went around giving everybody the middle finger.
Not only did he do it, he did something that most people can't do.
Yeah, forget Down syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, you and I haven't done an Ironman.
No.
I've had an eat on bed,
yeah.
but I've never done an Ironman. That's as close as it's going to get.
Yeah.
You know? And he went and he did it, you know, despite what I'm sure were various people, you know, in his life telling him no.
The closest we've gotten to an Ironman is wanting to compete on the obstacle course of Double Dare.
Yes. Or when I go to the comic book shop.
And even that's challenging.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. That mouth thing. Yeah. Yeah. But so you know, Chris Nikic, and I hope I pronounced it.
It was
properly.
quite the accomplishment.
Yep.
So
that is the end of episode 135.
Yes, everybody. That was a full-packed one.
Yes, had a lot to talk about.
As always, we hope everybody listened, laughed, and learned. And remember to grab your pastelito, your croqueta, and your cafecito. And thank you for joining us, everyone. Have a great weekend. Have a great Friday. Happy Friday, Pero Friday. Woo! See you all next week.
Cuídense, mi gente.
Next week. Bye.
Bye. Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lomlaplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.